Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Chess Advanced. And today we are at the Women's Speed Chess 2025, and we're here with an insane matchup. This is our amazing the FIDE World Cup winner, recently awarded GM elect, and also the great tactician, the magician Divya Deshmukh, going against China's, and also like how she has held 4 times world chess champion, women's world chess championship title. This is Hou Yifan, so the matchup's going to be incredibly insane, and I could just reveal the scores to you right here and right now, but most probably once this video is going to come out, you probably will know it. So if you don't want to know it, you can just skip through this part. But hey, it was a nail biting finish. I mean, with both players playing incredibly well, match went on to overtime, and even that was drawn. Armageddon was played, and Divya beat Hou Yifan so many times. It was nail biting finish just till the end, where she just made one single inaccuracy, where Hou Yifan was a little bit better on time and was able to clinch the victory. But Divya Deshmukh has been showing us what an incredible player that she is. She has beaten Hou Yifan so many times, and just shows that one day she's gonna be for India. Like, she's gonna make India proud, and definitely one day she has absolute potential to be world chess champion and hold that title one day, and definitely she's going to be doing that. And with this level of play, she's that time is definitely coming soon. But she's has to keep her head held high, because she has just shown what an incredible player she is. And with these games, you're going to realize what I mean. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Here Divya starts with the white pieces. So without further ado, let's start this e4, c5, c3, just d5, and now we have like Aleppan Sicilian kind of setup. We have e captures, queen captures, and just knight to f3. We have knight to f6, d4, e6, and just knight to a3. This knight to a3 setup is just very amazing. I mean, the preparation to this is absolutely incredible. I mean, here after a6 we have knight to c4, knight bd7, bishop to e3, and now just going for this b5, just targeting that pawn, targeting that knight. And in this position, Divya goes for a very nice knight to a5. That knight is going to be always bugging that bishop whenever that bishop is going to be being kettled. But it you can just take that, and being a piece on the edge of the board, to be taking that powerful of a piece is always incredible. Here queen to d6, but just d captures, queen to c7, and in this position Divya goes for a very insane move. She thought about it for roughly, I think, 30 seconds or something, but she in this position did not choose to actually go with the knight back. Neither did she choose to go for any other moves, but she went for this a4. This absolutely brilliant level of play, sacrificing an entire knight just by game one. That shows her level of perseverance, because here, if you capture this, your game is absolutely over. A captures, queen goes back, there is nothing here, c6, but now just comes this knight to d8. And here after queen captures, rook captures, you get this knight to e5, just trying to go for this, king to e8, but now just comes b6, and there is nothing that's gonna be stopping that. Also, these ideas are available. It's just very rough to be able to be there with the black pieces. But here after a4 we have bishop captures. Hou Yifan doesn't fall for it, but bishop caps on c5, queen captures, but knight to b3. But the point of sacrificing that knight was maybe that Hou Yifan will not fall for it, but the idea was that she will burn a lot of time calculating, and that's exactly what happened. Because Divya somewhere here was like 3.5 minutes, and Hou Yifan is like, she's 3 minutes, not that much difference. But then you understand that when you face such a thing right from the opening by your opponent, you're like, this is a very strong opponent. Queen to b6, but now just comes this a captures, e5, not even capturing it back, but e5 is not a good move. e5 was played to stop queen to d4 and infiltration, because here after knight captures, or this knight captures, whichever knight you capture it from, you have to understand that after the bishop jumps in and castle, it's very easy play, and Divya is definitely going to be winning that game. But here after bishop to e2, just castles, and now just going for this rook to b8. But in this position, Divya made a very incredible find. She went for bishop b captures on a6, and now you're just down a pawn, offering the piece here. But if you take it, you're just lost, and if you don't take it, you're just down a pawn, and that's a pass pawn that's about to be queening in 2 squares. So here just queen caps on b3 was played by Hou Yifan, but it's absolutely a blunder. Here just a7, and now what do? Queen caps on d1, but just here rook captures on d1, and now just comes rook to a8, but a beautiful bishop to b5. And now this is coming, there is no defense against that. e4 was tried by Hou Yifan to try and trick Divya a little bit, and she almost did, because here you have to find bishop to c6, sacrifice the knight doesn't matter. Here you're getting a full rook, Now if you do anything, let's say you try to connect the rook, so maybe you just don't lose. I don't know what that is, but even if you do, but here just rook moves, but next move you're just getting a8 queen. That's absolutely bad. But here after you go for e captures, then just bishop captures on e8, f caps on g2, bishop captures, and even if you go for this trying to defend against that, it's still coming. There is no way you can do anything, and this position is absolutely lost. But here after e4 we have knight back to e1, and now just it's a little bit bad, but then you have to understand Divya is like 25 seconds and Hou Yifan is like 5 seconds, so she has done her job perfectly well. Knight to c5 was played, but just b4, and now she's just going to push those pawns, connect those pawns, and those are passed pawns, and it's going to be very very easy. Bishop to c6, but just knight to e8, b5, but now just comes this b6, knight to e6, knight to c2, and just knight e to c5, knight to b4, and now just finally going for this bishop to g4 and rook to d5, h5. But now in this position there's a very very beautiful move that you could go for this bishop caps on b7, even knight caps, and still your position is winning. Can you imagine your strongest piece in this position, you trade it for a weak knight and still your position is winning? That's absolutely insane. c4, and now what do? There is nothing. Rook f to d8, maybe just trying to trade, but once you trade, knight captures, you cannot take it with the rook. I mean, that is just going away. c5, and even if you get the bishop back, just rook to c1, this and this is coming. There is nothing for you to do. After knight to a6, knight caps on a6 was played, but now this comes rook captures, and it was on this move, on just move 30, that Hou Yifan resigned the game. 4 times world chess champion winner, chess champion title holder, just resigns the game in 30 moves against Divya Deshmukh. That's absolutely, that's like a flex to have in life, this is amazing thing. And game two goes to actually Divya Deshmukh. First game was a draw, and she is leading this. So let's see what she does in further games. I'm going to be showing all the decisive games, just analyzing all the games. It's absolutely amazing. And now this is actually the fourth game. Third game ended in a draw. Still, Divya is leading, and she's leading by a full point. So and she's again with the white pieces. So Hou Yifan would have to face Divya with the white pieces, and it's going to be not that easy here. e4, c5, c3, d5, but just e captures, queen captures, knight to f3, knight to f6, and just d4. Still just going for the same opening with that knight to a3, and that's a very amazing find. e6, knight to a3, but just a6, and now knight to c4, and knight bd7 was played by Hou Yifan, just not choosing to go for b5 and not going right into Divya's preparations. But here bishop to e2 by Divya, and here b5, still going for it. But now there's a very very beautiful move that was found by Divya, which is this knight f to d2, sacrificing an entire knight right by move 9. I mean, this is absolutely insane. You cannot capture because bishop to f3 comes, and your queen and the rook are just very nicely aligned by my bishop. And the fact is, like, if you capture, bishop to f3 comes, there is no square for you. Where do you move? Like, if you move here, still captures, best is just this. So if here after bishop captures, now you play like c captures, and now just castle, bishop goes in. But here after this, I mean, I could just trade here, and the game would be absolutely fine. There is nothing here in this position, and you cannot even, I mean, you cannot do anything in this position, and that's how good it is. But here again, Hou Yifan is still stuck with if she should capture the sacrifice knight or not. Rook to b8 was played by her, but just bishop to f3, same idea. And now it's just very very difficult for Hou Yifan to actually continue this game. Queen to f5 was tried by her. You cannot even go here because that comes in, or there are so many ideas here in this position. That's absolutely a brilliant move. Knight to a5 again, still going after some lines in where if you try to get the queen there. We have c captures and bishop to d6. But now here just castles, rook to e1, rook to e8 was played by Hou Yifan, knight to e4. This is such a beautiful move because if you capture, then just captures, and if you don't even capture, this is coming in the position, your rook is going to be attacked, and you have to every time be cautious of the c6 square. Here just bishop to b4. This bishop to b4 is an absolute blunder, and as seen by the as seen by the engine as well. So you could just pause here, analyze this position, and try to find the best move in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move, and the move is the one we've been discussing all along. We have this knight to c6, and what do? Do you capture or do you not capture? Because knight to c6 was played by Divya, and Hou Yifan goes for bishop caps on e1, and this is just not a good move because here in this position, Divya Deshmukh did not capture the bishop. She did not even capture that knight. She went for this beautiful knight to d6, forking both and all of the rooks, queen, and everything. I mean, this is like, these are the knights from hell kind of story. This is amazing. bishop captures on f2 was played by Hou Yifan, but just king captures and knight to e4 check. Now you have to bring one of the pieces back, so knight captures on e4, that's a free piece. But here bishop to b7 was tried, but again in this position you could have gone for this knight to d6. And the idea is, once the queen moves, wherever it moves, queen to g6, you just capture. And now either you can capture here, but that would allow my knight to come back into the game via, these two squares. Or if you choose to go for this rook capture, then the knight comes in, you trade everything, and the position is completely lost. So even if you keep on every piece is on the board, that knight is still very powerful. So once I develop the bishop, wherever I develop the bishop, get the rook into the game, if you don't trade, you're just going to be losing soon. So that's why I said trading. But here, after bishop to b7, knight captures on b8, still working, still the same thing, because you can fork the next move. But here, rook captures and knight to d6 going just as planned. Bishop captures, queen captures played almost immediately, queen to c2 check, queen blocks, and here just going for this check, knight blocks, and now just going for this knight to b6, bishop to f4, and just rook to d8. She is winning right from move 19 or 18 or 19. That's how insane her prep was. Here, rook to c1, but now just going for this queen to d5, bishop to e5, and now just going for this f6. F6 just completely blunders the game, simply because of the fact that you can actually capture if you dare to, recapture back here. Just queen captures, then this is just completely over. Here, queen to f5 check was played, and now you might be wondering, like, what are you doing in this position? Your bishop is going to be falling, but nope. King to g1, g captures, but now just comes this rook into the game, and just captures, and now whatever you do, you're just losing. Let me show you a very great line. Queen to e5 was played. Now whatever you do, there might be chances of this, but here knight to c4 by Hou Yifan. You cannot go back along this diagonal, neither can you go into the front, so you have to move the queen away. But now comes this queen captures on e6, rook to f8. Now again, so much pressure, but the best move in this position is this beautiful move. You want to keep the tension on. There is not many moves that this can make. This is not threatening anything, so all you can do is by putting the pressure, not b3 but d5. That's a beautiful move in this position. And here, after knight to d2, like, you have to do something. If you play knight to d2, then I guess I can just get onto these squares again, threaten mate. And also, it doesn't work, simply because of the fact that I can just push the rook up. I can do many things in this position. So maybe not knight to d2, but if you go to king to g7, just trying to pick up the piece, queen to e7 check. And here, after rook to f7 blocking, you get this beautiful knight to e8 check. Now you have to move the king to h6, and unfortunately it's a mate in 9 moves. I think this would have been much more plausible. But here, after rook captures, queen to b1 check, rook comes back, and here after queen to h5, this is actually checkmate. So position is full of amazing tactical score. But here, after rook to f8, queen to e7 was played by Divya, still working, still winning. Rook to f7, but now just comes this queen to d8 check, king to g7, and now same idea, knight to e8. And I think her time ran out, Hou Yifan's, and Divya was able to beat 4 times world chess champion in just 36 moves. She doesn't even need the 40 moves. She beats her in 36 moves. That's absolutely insane. And game 4 goes to her. Now she has a 2-point lead. Let's see what happens. So this is actually game 5, and Hou Yifan with the white pieces, and she's in a desperate need to beat Divya Deshmukh, because she's like trailing by 2 points. And now, this is the last game of Blitz, and I think Divya was not even expecting this game, because the time actually ran out, and like, it was showing 0-0, but somehow the game started. And I think once it starts, like, then you have to play even if the time runs out. So that's why she was not even expecting this game, and it suddenly came up, and now you have to play. But again, then you have to keep your nerves in these kinds of tournaments, because situation can change very fast. e4 by Hou Yifan, c5, knight to f3, d6, d4, and c captures, knight to f6. Just going for the main Sicilian open variation, knight to c3, a6, knight off variation. Now we have this a4, but now just comes this very nice move in this position, which is e5, and going for all sorts of setups, this bishop setup, crisscross bishop setup, just going for the castles. Knight to f3 was played by Hui, and just this bishop to e7, bishop to g5, but just bishop to e6, bishop captures, and just going for and keeping that knight on that d5 square. Knight to c6 now, bishop to c4, castles, and now just going for a move like c3, and rook to c8, castles, and just king to h8 was played. King to h8 with the idea that once you go back with the knight to try and challenge the center, you face these position, but then you don't have to capture this. You can capture this, and now you ask, like, where is the knight going? Are you like pushing it back and allowing me to capture, or is there something else in this position? But here, after queen to d2, everything, queen to d2 is not a good move here. Queen to e2, on the other hand, could be a good move, simply because of that fact that once this comes, you can actually go here, or maybe not, with the rook being there, not, but if the rook was not there, definitely you can go. Bishop to g4, was played by Divya, but bishop to g4 is not a good idea, because you can see with the previous game that she played with the black pieces, she actually kept the bishop and then pushed f5. F5 is a crucial move in this position. You can play like f5 in this position, you can set it up, but then again you need the bishop here to be opposing this very strong bishop. And here in this position, queen to d3, but she went for bishop captures and queen captures. It seems like a normal variation, because you want to make a little bit you want to allow these pieces to be there, but I mean, just challenge the center. But then again, you have to understand that I think it was not a good positional choice. But here after bishop to g5, and now this bishop to a2, this bishop is very, very strong. On the other hand, Divya's bishop is not that good. I think that's the whole point of it. Knight to e7, rook a d1, and you cannot even play a move like, let's say knight to g6 here, thinking that maybe just somewhere along the line you're just going to get that knight there, because just knight captures. And g3, not even allowing this f5. Now if you go for f5, the game is completely lost, by the way, because here e captures, and now this queen captures, you trade everything, you get the queen into the game, and slowly you'll see that you just double up here, and you cannot even capture this pawn. This becomes a safe haven for me. If you trade the queens, then the bishop jumps in. This pawn is a weak pawn, somewhere along the line eliminated, and positionally it's not a good game. I mean, not a good game, not a good position you want to have. But after rook a to d1, we have knight captures and bishop captures, but again, this bishop is an absolute monster here, man. Come on, just you cannot even move the bishop. And on the other hand, if you have this bishop, if somehow this pawn wasn't there and you can get the bishop there, I mean, then you understand that you have a decent position. But again, other than that, I think it's not a good move. It's not a good position here for Divya. But here after queen to d7, now we have rook to d3. And now, what do you do? What do you play in this position? Your position, and you're pushed on the back foot. There needs to be something, because this is already eyeing, and no other move actually gives you a little bit of a good advantage. So you have to find just one move. So you go, test your defensive skills. Let's see what you're able to conjure up in this position, because the best move in this position is actually going for rook to c7. This is only move that that doesn't loses right on the spot. Rook f to d1, but you have this f5 now. You can actually push it, but I mean, it's just such a double-edged position. If you capture here, rook captures, and you move the queen maybe with an attack towards the bishop, and bishop I think needs to go either all the way back or either here, so that you keep a control of this, and never you can push f4 yourself. But again, it's a very, very double-edged position. I mean, if you go for g6 in this position, which was actually played, g6 was played here in this position after rook to d3, but g6 is just doesn't work, because after queen to d1, bishop to e7, now you go for this, and now there's just too many threats. I mean, you can deal with at the same time. Here b5 was tried, but just after this you have rook to b8, a captures, rook captures, and just going for this queen to c2. But now it's just very, very different story. And here a5 was tried, but just queen to a4, and now you can understand that the position is not that good. Rook to d8, but here just rook to d2, bishop to g5, attacking the rook moves, and now just going for this, asking for a queen trade. If you trade the queens, maybe something can be done, but here just queen to b3, just keeping on the pressure, also putting a lot of pressure on that pawn. King to g7 was played, but now just this h3, queen to c7, rook to a4, and now just going for this rook to b8, queen to a2, rook c to b5, and now rook to c4. Now this queen to d8, now just finally going for this rook to c6, queen to e7, and now finally going for queen to c4, attacking a lot, and also going for this. I mean, the position is looking very, very hopeless here. You have to play this. I think this is the only move that doesn't lose right on the spot. But here queen to f6 was played, and it just doesn't work, because rook joins in, and now you have nothing in this position. King to h6, rook captures, queen to d8, but now just comes this rook to c5, and now just trying something here. Maybe if you're able to get that in, maybe you'll be able to have something. The bishop moves all the way to now c1 to try and put pressure on that pawn, but now just queen to b1, bishop captures, rook captures, rook captures, and queen to c1, and now just comes this g5 to try and get some room, and the room for the king. But there is no way that you can survive this. H caps on g5 was played, king to g6, king to g2, but now just comes a4, trying to push that pass pawn, because that's all you have. But there is a very beautiful line here, queen to h1, and now not surviving this. I mean, if you go for this, then this is checkmate. And if you try it with the other way around, like king captures, then rook to g7 check, king moves, and queen to h6 is checkmate. So whatever you do, you're getting mated here. Queen to h1 after queen to h8 was tried, but now just this comes, and this is checkmate. And unfortunately for Divya, the lead has come down to 1 point against Hou Yifan. I think that if the lead was 2 points and going into like blitz, then I think she would have just won and completely obliterated her. But now it's going to be a close call, and let's see where that leads us. And this is the very next game of the 3+1 section. And hey, Divya is still leading by 1 point, but she has to be very much careful not to throw that lead away. And this game is just going to be absolutely insane. And it's a long game, so I'm not going to keep you waiting for long. So hey, just e4, c5, c3, e6, and just knight to f3. So Divya goes for the Alpen Sicilian again, d5, e5, but just knight to c6, d4, queen to b6, and now just we have bishop to d3, c captures castles. Now you are sacrificing the pawn, but actually this game she already played in the Olympiad, and she did it very well. She was able to beat a French grandmaster. I think her name is Mitra something. I'm just not able to remember her surname. Bishop to d7, but just rook to e1, and now just knight g to e7, h4, h6, and now just going for this knight to b2. She went for the same variation after captures, and d captures, b captures, queen to c7, and knight to b3. Here knight to a5. Her opponent went the same way, but now rook to b1. This is a very nice improvement here in this position, because if you capture, then just queen comes in, then you are asking a lot of questions from black, so black needs to be careful. Rook c to e6 was played here, knight c to e6 was played here. Just if you capture, then all of those things are there. Bishop to e3, but now just comes this bishop to c4, and in these positions this dark squared bishop is actually very strong. So what you have to understand is that you would gladly actually give up the light squared bishop, because light squared bishop is not that strong in these variations. So bishop captures, d captures, and you will actually trade it, because you get moves like this in, and even in some lines you're able to actually sacrifice that as well. So this bishop is absolutely important in this position, and you cannot just trade it for a knight, and that too, I mean, that knight is not that strong. Knight to c5, but just well, p6, and it's just an invitation to actually take it. Knight captures, queen captures, and the best way to go about this position is maybe just to go for this queen to c2. Like just get the rook in, maybe just wait and see what's going to happen, and most likely you're going to get like bishop to e7, rook joins in, and now after putting some pressure you could go either here or here, and either way it's fine. I mean, the position is not going to be that bad, and most likely you're going to be holding Hou Yifan to a draw. But here after queen captures on d7, Divya decided to go for this queen to a4. A nice move in this position, but you have to understand that you have already sacrificed a pawn. One pawn is on h4, and now there is one issue with this position, and that is that actually you can just grab it, and it's a very nice tactic. And now you're going to be a pawn down. Queen captures, knight captures, knight to d2 was played, but now you're 2 pawns down, and going into the end game it's not looking good. Rook to c8, a4, but now just bishop to e7, a5, bishop caps on h4, but now just a captures, and most likely whenever you're pawn down, you have to think about not trading more pieces. But if you're getting another pawn, you have to you're just 3 pawns down, you have to get some material back. So here that's what they did. She went for this bishop captures on b6, and now just knight captures was played, rook captures and just castles, but now this position is going to be very much difficult to hold. Rook to e3, but just going for this bishop to g5. Rook goes back, and now trading, but now this comes this, and you have to double up now. And this against this, I mean, if you just remove all of these things even from the boards, it's still winning. So this is a very difficult game. That's going to be g3, h5, but now just comes king to g2, g6, but just king to f3, king to g7, king to g2, and here just king to f6. Rook to f4 check, king goes back, and now just going for this rook to d4, not allowing the king to come into the deep into the position. e5 was played, but now just rook to e4, rook to c5, f4, but just f6, and now comes this f captures, and now just going for this cutting off the king. That is very much important. And here after king to f7 we have g4, h captures, rook captures, but now just going for this, but we have rook to b4, and now what do you do? King to f6 was played, but here after king to f3, king to f5, king to g3, and g5, you actually she blundered a little bit, because here rook to b8, and now comes this rook to d5. Rook to d5 is actually a blunder in this position, because rook to f8 check, and now if rook to f6, you are actually losing this pawn. So if you don't want to do that, how about you go king to g6, but that doesn't work either. If you go here, then just rook captures is simply very nice, but here rook to g8, and now just king to h7, and you just grab pawn, and also this, and maybe there's some perpetual ideas as well. So this is unfortunate that it's still a draw, but that's very, very amazing for Divya. But here after rook to f6, rook captures, and just grabbing that, and it's still a draw, but you have to still find the best moves, and both players are like 2 to 3 seconds on the clock. They're playing basically on increment, but then you have to understand that rook to c8 was played, rook to d3, king to g2, and just g4, but just rook to f8 check, king to e4, and now just going for this, but here just a few checks instead of going for the perpetual. She captured, and after rook captures, it's still a draw, but again both players are like 2 seconds on the clock. King to e3, king rook to g3, king to d2, rook to g4, and now just going for king to e3, rook to g3 check, and you still keep on checking here. e4 was played, and the move that you have to find in this position is rook to h4, not doing anything, not allowing the back pawn to be pushed. Just move the king away. If you go here, then it's still not that good, because I can get the king into the game and maybe I'll be able to hope for a draw. But after rook to h8, now there is nothing but a draw. Now I get the king, I can cut you off, and there is nothing you can do. Even if you give a check, I mean, still I'm opposing, and it's still a draw. And that's the idea that was there in this position. But here after king to f2, there was this check was played, and once you get inside, I mean, this is just over. King to d, rook to d3, rook to g8, rook to c1, and this is just, I mean, here after this king to e2, rook to d8, and this is just over. And it was on this move. Actually, this is not over. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that last move she did a mistake of rook to d8. You don't want to play rook to d8 in this position, because that gives your opponent some hope. All you have to do is just push the pawn and get the king into the game, because the idea is that now you cannot get out of checks, because here after rook to c2, how are you going to make anything in this position? The rook is just going to be annoying you every time you move forward, and the king is still there, so that's going to be opposing you every single time. And once the rook gets back to it, you just cannot promote, and it's still a draw. It's still a draw. But unfortunately for Divya, her time ran out by looking for all of these moves, and now Hou Yifan has actually equalized in the game, and it's not that good. So let's see what the Divya has to deal with the next game. And this is now their seventh game, and Divya and Hui have actually equalized. Score is now absolutely equal, so whoever wins this, or if you're able to draw this, then we move into the further into the bullet and everything else. And Divya has to be very much careful here. She's on a losing streak. She's lost two matches right in a row, and she has to be very much careful here. e4 was played by Hui, but now just c5 by Divya. Knight to f3, d6, d4, and just c captures, knight captures, and just going for this knight to f6. And here we have knight to c3, just going for the Sicilian variation. Knight off, we have bishop to e3, e5, and just knight to b3, bishop to e7, queen to d2, bishop to e6. But now just going for this f4, e captures, bishop captures, and just knight to c6, castles, knight to e5, king to b1, and just castles. And now just going for this knight to d4, b5, but just bishop to d3, and now just going for this rook to c8. Everything is looking fine. I mean, when you look at the structure, I think white is just absolutely going there, because this knight can jump in. You have ideas of playing all of this, so the position is very, very insane. Knight to f5 was played in this position, and here we have b4, just attacking that knight, but other knight jumps in. And now what do? You could go for this very insane line with knight captures, and here after this captures, I don't think you have the luxury to capture here, but I think you can capture here, but then you give the bishop pair, and it's just very, very annoying. So here just knight captures was played, this captures, and just knight captures, which is the absolute best move recommended by the engine as well. Here knight captures on e7, queen captures, and just queen captures on d3, and here just bishop comes in, attacks the rook moves back, and you have to find a very good move in this position for black, because if you don't, then there is a very sneaky play that can happen here. I think you could go for a move like that, but then again, if that comes, then you have to be careful. Move like h5 is absolutely fine in this. h3, bishop moves back, g4, and you play h4 here, so absolutely no issues with that. And also the rook move is also fine. But after queen to f6, there is an issue in this position, because in this position Hou Yifan goes for the absolute best move, which is queen to g3. And how do you defend that pawn? There is no defense to that pawn, so you're going to be losing that pawn, and it's just going to be very, very bad. Bishop to f5 was played, but now just comes this, and a beautiful rook sacrifice with rook captures on c2. And then again, she already sacrificed the rook in the first game that they drew, and she was able to get a draw out of a losing position. So let's see if they were able to do it again, because here in this position rook captures on c2 was played, but the other rook comes in. But there is a very amazing way in this position to get out of all the trouble, which is this bishop to c7, and Hou Yifan finds this. But again, they were again complicating things. Bishop captures on c2, king captures, but just queen to f5 check was played, king moves, and now just going for this queen captures on d5. There are even ideas of going for this, and in this position just this was played, and now it is an issue, because simply because of the fact that it's a draw. Queen captures on e2 was played by Divya, rook to d8 check, rook captures, bishop captures, queen to a1 check, and it's still a draw. King to c2, queen to a4 check, it's still a draw. King to d2, but you have to find a very crucial move in this position. Divya in this position made some breathing room for the king. She went for h5, but that doesn't work, because it isn't as forcing. You have to play this queen to d7 check. After queen to d3, there is only one move in this position that saves the game, and that move is the spectacular queen to c6, just going for this pawn, and that would come with a check. So wherever you move the bishop next, let's say you move the bishop to h4, now you get this queen to g2 check, queen to e2 blocking, queen to d5, and wherever you go, black queen will follow you with an insane amount of checks, and it's most likely going to end in a draw. But here after king to d2, h5 was played, and h5 does not work. Queen to d3 was played, but queen to d3 even doesn't work because you have some checks in your camp. Queen to a2, queen to e2, and after this queen to d4, queen to e6, bishop to h4, but now just going for this queen to c6, queen to c6, and queen to d8 check, king to h7, and queen to g5. Queen to g5 with the idea that whatever check comes, if you're able to get out of it, and it doesn't hit the bishop, I mean, you're absolutely fine. Then queen to d6 check, king to c2, and in this position, you had to find only one move. And I found it, I think, after like calculation of, I think, 4 to 5 minutes. And this is a very, very crucial move to find in this position, which is this queen to e6. And the idea being that I think b3 is coming, this check is also coming, and there is not a good way to go about this position. If you go for queen caps on h5, I can just put the king back, and there are no more checks in this position. So suddenly, I mean, white doesn't have a good move that they can play to end the game right on the spot. And I think that was the idea here. But after king to c2, queen to c6 check, and it just doesn't work now, simply because of the fact that this g2 pawn is not hanging anymore. So here after this, king to b3 was played, queen to e6 check, king captures, queen to b6, king to a3, queen to d6, king to a2, and queen to e6. A lot of these checks, but still it's not a draw now, because here after this, all of these checks was given by Divya to try to draw the game, and both players are playing on seconds. But here, just a few more moves later, you just realize that maybe it's not a draw, because hey, the pawn push happens, and I mean, it's just over, because here she played this, and after this there is no more checks, and it was on move 70. I didn't want to show all those checks because that's just unnecessary. So here it was on move 70, and there was no actual way to actually draw the game, no checks and nothing. So she played it perfectly, Hou Yifan, and unfortunately for Divya, she's not trailing by a point. So let's see what she's able to conjure up in the next match. And this is actually game 8, and Hou Yifan is actually leading by a single point. I mean, she was actually losing in the series, but again, she has bounced back. And let's see how Divya is able to deal with this, because she has the white pieces. Let's see what she can do. E4, c5, c3, just e6, going for the Alepian Sicilian. We have knight to f3, d5, e5, and just d4, just trying to trade more space in the center. Bishop to b5 check, bishop to d7, bishop captures, queen captures, and just castles. But now this comes knight to c6. We have d3, knight g7, rook to e1, and just rook to d8. Going for c4, c4 is the best move in this position. h6, but now just comes this h4. Queen to c7, now just going for this bishop to f4, not trying to lose that pawn, but a very beautiful g5 in this position. H captures, the perfect move. Knight captures, and now just bishop moves back. We have again h captures, knight captures, and just bishop goes here. Knight to e4, knight to e4, maybe perhaps not the best way to go about this, but I think if you want some counterplay, you have to go for a move like this. King to d7, just trying to get the king out of there, because you have to understand moves like that are still possible. But is it possible right now? It is, because if you go for this, then it opens up attack towards the queen, so you cannot capture here. After this knight check, I think what you have to play is king to c8, and then after knight to d2 comes, you play like g captures. But then again, you have moves like this available. Maybe just somewhere along the line you're gonna have that as well. So you know or maybe even this is in the position, obviously not that, because in that line you lose a piece. So maybe just this is also there. So all in all, you do get some counterplay here in this position, although the position looks really, really bad because the rooks are joining in and it's going to be very much dangerous. But still, maybe something is there for you after all here. But after a6, after king to d7, knight to a3 was played, and then a6, but knight to c2. And I think going after this and going for b4 is a little bit too slow. G captures was played, b4 now, and instead of this b4, you could also go for f4, and but now you get this f5, and now you have to capture, and rook captures, and maybe you're able to conjure up something. But then again, same idea, those rooks are absolutely insane. But here after knight caps on e5, now there is this b4 idea, but again, c captures on b4, f4 now, but again the same idea, f5, knight captures, knight to g5, rook to h6, and now just comes this queen to e2. But now here rook d to h8, and the position is looking very, very bad. Captures on e5 was played, but now just comes this bishop captures, but after rook a b1, queen to d8, I mean, now what do? There is absolutely just nothing can be played here. You could go for this knight caps on b4, but after knight captures, rook captures, I mean, there is nothing here. After this check, king moves further, queen to e8, trying to go for this. Yes, you can deliver one check, but once this is taken care of, what do? If you try this, then this comes in. This is just a position that's about to be over. But here after queen to f2 was played, But after queen to d8, queen to f2 was played, but now queen to f2 is an absolute blunder, not because of this, but because that is actually checkmate is happening on h1, and that's exactly what was played. And Divya was able to, with the white pieces, she blundered somewhere around the middle game, and with the white pieces, she was able to, she actually lost this game, and that's really, really heartbreaking. But again, maybe in the next bullet rounds, she'll be able to do well, but now she's trailing by 2 points, and it's going to be very much difficult. And now this is the ninth game, and Dibya has to show some really, really strong chess here, because well, the score is almost even, and you have to do something at e4 c5. We have knight to f3 d6 and just d4, going for the Sicilian defense. But now we have the c captures, knight to f6, knight to c3, a6, and just bishop to e3, but just going for this e5. We have the same English attack every single time, and Divya plays it so well. Bishop to e7, queen to d2, and just castles, queenside castle this time. But now bishop to e6, f4, and now just knight to c6, and just pushing the pawn all the way. And you could actually capture here, and Divya goes for it. Bishop captures, c captures, b5 now, and king to b1. You always an important move. And rook to c8 was played, but now just comes this bishop to e2, b4 even. But now the knight jumps to the center, knight caps on e4, a very nice tactic. Now the knight goes back, absolutely best move here. Bishop to f3, but now just going for this a5, rook to c1, knight captures, bishop captures, and just knight to d4. Very amazingly played by Divya. And we have bishop captures, e captures, and you don't want to capture this pawn simply because that the bishop comes in, and that comes in with the tempo, and there is no good way for you to put that queen somewhere else. But in this position, Hou Yifan goes for queen captures on d4. Bishop to f6 comes. She played queen to a7, which is a complete blunder. You know why it's a blunder? Because there is this very beautiful move, bishop captures on b2. And now if you capture, you get this queen to f6 check. King moves, this captures comes with a check, and you capture the bishop, and you have won 2 pawns, completely winning. You have an outside passer, and you have also this passer. I mean, you're not surviving this game. But here after queen to a7, rook to c5 was played. They completely missed it. But now comes this rook captures, going for this d captures, queen captures on c5, and now just queen to d7. Now amazingly rook to f1, but now comes this king to d8. Instead of this king rook to d8, there's a very beautiful move in this position. Can anyone spot it? Because the move is actually this amazing rook to c8, and now it's just a very different story. Where do you move the queen? You also have to keep an eye on the bishop as well, but there is no way to actually keep an eye on the bishop. You can capture queen caps on a5, but I mean, that is the only move that you have. Other than that, there is no move in the position, and everything appears to be falling. And I mean, for now it's protected, but sooner or later, somewhere along the line, it's going to fall, and it's going to be very much difficult. And it would have been completely winning, but she didn't find it. She goes rook to d8, but now just bishop to e4, queen to d2. Both players are playing on seconds on the clock. Queen to c2, queen to d4, bishop to f3, but now h6. And now instead of this h6, you could have also gone for a very nice bishop to e5 now. That looks very weird, but after rook to d1, queen to b6, and after trade, I mean, it could come in a little bit handy somewhere along the line. But you could also go for moves like this, because once the check comes, you have to somewhere. So that check could have been blocked. But here after queen to d7, just rook comes in, rook to d8, and here after this, it's just very difficult position, because here after queen to b6, rook captures, and it's still a draw, and that's an issue because she needs to win. Queen to c7, but now h3, but now going for queen to e5. And in this position, luckily for Divya, here Hou Yifan actually blundered. She pre-moved queen to d3, and now the game is over. Queen caps on b2 with a checkmate, and Divya has been able to bounce back in the game. Let's see what happens in the next game, because she has to win, and let's see how she does it. Game 10th had actually ended in a draw, and this is game 11th, and this is going to be very difficult, because Divya has to win this game to be able to get an equal chance in bullet. She's still trailing by a point, and it's going to be very much difficult if she doesn't win this game. She's going to be trailing by 2 points if she loses, or if she drew, then she has to actually fight back really well in bullet. But without further ado, let's start this game. Divya with the white pieces. She starts with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, and knight to f3. We have b6 going for the queen's Indian defense, and now we have g3, bishop to b7, bishop to g2 going for the fianchetto variation, and we have this g6, castles, bishop to g7, knight to c3, and now just going for this knight to e4. Really aggressive chess by Hou Yifan. Queen to c2, but just knight captures, and going for this b captures, f5, d5, e5 now, and now just e4. And now we have castles, and we have e captures, g captures, and here just going for knight to h4. This knight to h4 was not the best move in this position. The best move in this position is bishop to g5. The idea being that once you play queen to e8, you have this knight to h4 now, and after queen to f7, there is a very, very brilliant move in this position. I mean, you're defending this, which seems fine, but you have this f4. So brilliant this move is, because here after h6, now you go for this now you go for this very, very amazing line. F captures on e5, sacrificing the entire piece, and here after h captures, you have knight captures, and now the queen has to go back because there are just so many threats in this position that you would not be able to calculate everything. So whatever happens, you're just winning this game. But here after g captures, knight to h4 4 was played. It's not a bad move, but it just takes away a lot chunk of your advantage. Queen to f6, but just bishop to h3, and now that pawn is falling. f4, now pushing it all the way, but now just bishop to d2. This bishop to d2 is a bit of a slow move, and not something that she should have played. But here after knight to a6, that knight is jumping now, and it's going to be very much difficult for Divya to hold this position. Bishop caps on d7, just grabbing a pawn. Knight to c5, but just bishop to f5. Now just putting some pressure there. We have just queen to h6, defending everything, and this queen to h6 is such an amazing move. Seems like a very passive move, but you have to understand that this square has been occupied by the bishop, so knight can never jump in to try and deliver a very nice fork. So you can exchange one of those strong bishops. But here rook a to e1, but now just comes this bishop to h6. You have to bring the bishop back to be able to save that pawn. You cannot give back that pawn. Queen to h5, but just f3 now. f3 is the only defensive resource, and Divya found it with like seconds on her clock. She was down to 42 seconds. Bishop to c8 now, but just comes bishop back to c1, and now we have this bishop to f6, knight back to g2, but now just knight captures, queen captures, and just bishop to f5, attacking the queen. And the position is looking very, very bad for Divya. I mean, she had a better position, but she could not take advantage of that, and now it's just very, very bad. Queen to d1 was played, queen to g6, and here you have to be very much careful. g4 does not work in this position. The best move in this position is g captures on f4, and after e captures, you play bishop captures on f4, and yes, you will face this bishop to d3, attacking the rook. But here after rook to f2, bishop caps on c4. Now it seems like you're just worse here in this position, but no, you have a very, very amazing move in this position, which is this very beautiful rook lift, rook to e4, attacking this bishop, keeping an eye on this bishop, and your game is just spectacularly going, and you're going to be winning this game after this. But here after queen to g6, we have g4, and g4 does not work, not because of any sacrifices, but just going for this bishop to d3. Rook moves, captures, and now that pawn was going to be falling either way, so she just pushed it. Rook a to d8, but just queen to b4, bishop to d5, now just going for this c4, bishop to c6, and now just going for bishop to b2. Her position is worse, but again, Hou Yifan has to find the right moves, and she's not been able to find the right moves here. Rook to d3 was played by her, but it's still working, and she can still draw this. Bishop caps on e5, but now bishop captures, rook captures, and bishop caps on f3 was played, and it seems like it's all lost for white. But here you have to find this h3, only move that saves the game. And here after bishop caps on g2, king captures, f3, king to h2, you're doing absolutely fine. Looks scary, but it's still a draw. But here after bishop caps on f3, Divya in this position went for c5, just trying to maybe go for this check and pick up this. I mean, it wouldn't have worked because simply you can just go there. But here just rook to d1 check, rook to e1, rook caps on e1, and here after this knight captures, queen captures, and now this is just not at all looking well for her. Queen to s3 check, king to g1, queen to g4 check, and after king to f1, bishop to d5, queen to d4, but now just comes the rook and it's all over. C captures, but now just queen to s3 check, king moves, and now just a captures, queen caps on b6, rook to e5 check, queen to d2, queen to e3 check, queen captures on e3, and now after f captures, it was on this move, on move 45, that Divya Deshmukh resigned the game, and game 11 actually goes to Hou Yifan. She has a 2-point lead going into the bullet section, so Divya has to really, really outperform Hou Yifan in the bullet section. So let's see what she's able to conjure, because she will have the black pieces, but she might be able to do something really, really good. And this starts the bullet segment, and Divya has to win 3 games in a row to be able to force tie breaks. It's going to be absolutely insane. Let's see what she does. E4 by Hou Yifan, c5 by Divya, d4, d6, d captures, queen to a5, and this is the issue in this position, because here she was not at all expecting for her to go to a very, very different variation. She was expecting like something like knight to f3, but here after going for this, instead she just played this d captures, and they were just completely missed it. So queen to a5 is the only move. Knight to c3, queen captures, and she has a substantial advantage right from the opening. Bishop to e3, but just queen to c7, knight to f3, knight to f6, bishop to e to a6, but just a4, but now just g6, and now going for a5, bishop to g7, castles. We have knight to d4, knight to c6, and now just knight to b3. Bishop goes to e6, queen to d2, and after knight to e5, now just going for this f3. Now the situation is equal, but she still has to fight to be able to get a win. And it's as it's bullet, we're not going to be analyzing it a bit too much. It's just people are playing on seconds here, so they're bound to make some mistakes. But so no point in just overdoing it. Bishop captures, queen captures, rook to a4, attacking the queen. Queen moves back, but now just comes knight to d4, and the position looks very, very amazing for Hou Yifan. The bishop is going to be lost. Slowly the queen can jump in, target the weak pawns, and the game is going absolutely great for white. Here queen to d7, but just bishop knight captures, queen captures, and just knight to d5. Hey, she found a way to trade. Obviously you cannot take because the queen is guarding it. Rook to b4, but now just comes this rook a to c8, and now we have c3, not allowing any of the counterplay to exist here. And now we have rook to c7, but just bishop to b6. Rook goes back, bishop to d4, and now just bishop captures, rook captures, and now just going after the a5 pawn. But we have rook to e1. If you go after the a5 pawn, I'm going to go after the c7 pawn, e7 pawn, and now after this rook to c7, defending it, but just this c4. And now rook captures, queen captures, and it might be it might look like you just given up a pawn, but well, rook caps on e7, and now there's nothing. Queen to c5 check was played, king moves, and now the rook jumps in, h3, queen to b5, and now just going for this king to h2. We have rook to c5, and the rook to c5 completely blunders the game. Can you see it? It's actually a mate in 7, and the idea starts with queen to f4, and now you can understand why the issue existed, because now there is no other move. You have to go here and put this, and the game is absolutely lost. But luckily for Divya, both players are playing like with seconds on the clock, so there are a lot of pre-moves. She didn't find it. She had already pre-moved queen to e3, but now just comes rook caps on d5, and now with this check you have this queen check, rook blocks, and there are no such f3 moves in this there are no f4 moves in this position. And simply because of the fact that this is also hanging, so you have to be careful. Rook to d8, but now just comes this queen to c5, queen captures, rook captures, and now rook captures, and she is up a pawn, so she can convert it to a win, but she has to push it. Rook to b5, rook to d2, rook to b3, and now just king to f4, a5, but just rook to e4, b5, but just rook to c2, h5, f4. And simply you can convert this by playing moves like this, and it's very, very easy to convert this, but you have to be still very much careful, because again, she's very strong, and again, just one blunder and the game is just falling out of your hands. So rook to b4 check was played, king to e5, rook to b3, and again just pushing that pawn all the way. We have f6 check, king moves, and now just going for this check, king moves, and just g captures. Double pawns, looks bad, but still she's completely winning. And now here we have king to d4, but now just rook to e4 check, king moves, and now just going for rook to b4, completely winning. All you have to do is get the king into the game, and slowly but surely just put pressure on those pawns, and it's not going to be that difficult. But still the game is going to go on, because both players are going to make mistakes. Rook to f2, king to g6, king to d5, but now just king to g5, king to c5, rook to b3, but now just king to d5, f4, but now king to e4, rook to b4 check, king to d5, and now king to f5. Slowly she's making progress, but she has to do it fast, because otherwise one slip and it could be all over. King to e4, rook to e2 check, king to d3, but now just rook to f2, king to e4, rook to e2 check, king to d3, and now rook to f2. Again, just playing players repeating moves. King to e3, rook to f3 check, king to e4, and now just b3. h4 was played, but now just going for rook to c3, but now just king to e5, rook to f3. And simple way to convert this is just maybe to give back one pawn to be able to capture all of these pawns, and that's exactly what she gets the idea. She plays king to f5, but just rook to d3, rook to e4, but now comes king captures, rook to e3, and now you have to either trade. If you trade, the game is completely lost, so you have to give this check, but king to e4, and now rook to d6, rook caps on b3, king to a4, but now just rook to g3, and you're just going to be capturing this, and the game is completely over. There is no need to overanalyze that. Rook king captures, but just rook caps on g2, rook captures f3, but now just going after that pawn, king to e3, rook caps on h4. But here after f2, Hou Yifan's time ran out, and Divya was able to get this spectacular victory. She was winning right from the opening, but she has to win 2 consecutive rounds to be able to go for the tiebreak. So let's see how she does it. And this is the game, the bullet game, and this is, I think, the shortest game of their matchup, and Divya has to win this to be able to equalize it, and she won't get this chance again because she's with the white pieces. So without further ado, let's start with this game. e4 was played by Divya, c5 by Hou Yifan, c3, e6, and just going for knight to f3. We are again in the Olympian sequence that we have been seeing all along. d5, e captures, bishop to b5, but just bishop to d7. We see a trade, and just d4 immediately in the center, knight to f6, castles, and bishop to e7, but just this d captures, bishop bishop captures, and now just going for this check. Knight blocks, but now comes this bishop to e3, bishop captures, rook captures, and now here just going for castles. Knight bd2, knight captures, queen captures, and just knight to c6. But now this is going to be an isolated pawn, and you understand when an isolated pawn is like this, rook can join in and you're going to be winning it. And Hou Yifan does not have any defense for it. Rook a to d8, but just rook to d3, knight queen to e6, but just h3, h6, knight to d4. We see a trade, rook captures, and you can easily eliminate it and trade all the pieces. c4, but now just going for this rook to c8, c captures, and just queen blocks. Queen to b4 was played, rook, but now just going for this rook to c4, b6, but just rook captures, b captures, and now finally going after these pawns as well. She can really win this and equalize the score. Rook to e2, but now just comes this queen caps on b5, attacking the rook and also going for all these check ideas if the rook ever moves. I mean, this is looking very scary for Hou Yifan. Rook to c2 was played, but it just completely blunders the game. Here comes a beautiful move, queen to e8 check, king moves, and now this check, and here you have to block, otherwise you lose the rook. But now do you see the problem? Queen captures, king captures, and now comes d6, and now you cannot stop that promotion. And Divya Deshmukh won this game. She has equalized the score, and there is still one more bullet game left. Let's see what happens in that one. This is the second last game of the bullet, and whoever actually wins this would be in a tremendously amazing strong spot to be able to qualify for the semifinals or the finals of the semifinals. But here in this position we have Hou Yifan with the white pieces, Divya with the black pieces. So let's see how it goes. This is actually game 13th, and this is going to be very interesting. We have e4 by Hou Yifan, c5 by Divya, d4, c captures, queen captures, knight to c6, and queen goes back, g6, but knight to c3, bishop to g7, knight to f3, and d6. Now we have bishop to e2, knight to f6, and just castles. This is the Smith-Morra gambit of Sicilian defense, and you have to be very much careful with this. Knight to d5, knight captures, pawn captures, and now bishop attacks. You don't have a pawn to defend it, so you have to move the queen back. And here after knight to e5 we see knight to d4. Now attacking this bishop, we have bishop to e4 now, just going for this this isolated pawn, but just c4. And now you're asking black, what are you doing with that bishop there? We have rook to c8, but just f3, and that bishop needs to move. But this is actually an insane blunder by Hou Yifan, simply because there's a beautiful tactic in this. You can pause the video to try and find it out. It's a bullet game. I'm not analyzing it like a bit too thoroughly, so we'll just see the tactic, which is beautiful knight caps on c4. If you capture with this, then this captures. That also comes with an attack on the knight as well, so you don't want to do something like that. And if you capture the bishop, then comes queen to b6, and now there is too much pressure. There is too much pressure on this knight, everything, and you cannot defend it. If you go here, then just knight captures, and your position is absolutely lost. And if Divya had found it, she would be completely winning here. But instead, it's a bullet game. You cannot expect to find all these. But here just bishop to f5, but now knight caps on f5. We have g captures. Knight caps on f5 was not a good move. You had to wait, build the pressure, and then capture. But here we have queen to c2, knight caps on c4, and now just going for queen caps on f5, knight back to e5, simply because it doesn't allow bishop to d3, because there are some mating ideas. Bishop to e3, but now just knight to g6, defending against all mating ideas. Bishop to d3, b6, but now just comes this h4, e6. Now just comes this d captures, and if you allow all that pawn to come into the position, it will be eventually be mate. So there is just one move in this position, which is this queen caps on h4, and Divya plays it instantly. We have e captures, but now just rook moves, rook ac1, rook captures, but just knight to e5, attacking this. And again, you have to be very much careful. Move like bishop to f2 is absolutely fine in this position, but here after like queen to h6 attacking the rook, you have to find this rook to c7, which is just a little bit difficult to find. But then again, I mean, it's a bullet game. There is no point in expectations of finding everything. But here we have this very nice, after like knight to e5, we have this bishop to e4, but now just comes this knight back to g6, bishop moves back. But here after this trading, and now you have this king is definitely coming into the position, and you're going to be capturing that. But it's still a very hopeless position here. Bishop caps on b2 was played, but now just comes this rook caps on a7, knight to e5, and now just bishop to d5, king to g7, bishop to h4, but now just comes this bishop to d4 check, king moves, and now just knight to g6 attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to f2, asking for a trade. If you trade, then it's going to be very much difficult, but she trades it, because if you don't trade, then you're just completely lost. Knight to f4 was played, bishop to b3, d5, but just g3, knight to d3 check, king to e3, but just knight to b4. We have a3, knight to c6, and rook to c7 attacking the knight, and then just a check, king moves, and now just going for this knight to a5. You have to be very much careful with the knights, you know, it's always tricky. Rook to d8, king caps on d4, but just knight to b3 check, king moves, and now a beautiful knight to c5. And now comes this rook to c7, king to f8. But in this position, Hou Yifan completely missed the idea, and she goes for this knight to b7. And now Divya spots it with 6 seconds on his clock. She goes for this knight captures, bishop captures, but this position is completely winning now. And just a few more moves later, rook to c8 f5, rook to c3 f6, and hereafter rook to king to f8 a4, but rook caps on g3, bishop to c6. But now after rook to c3, here Hou Yifan's time ran out, and Divya, for like after a long time, is in the lead in this match. And there's going to be one more bullet game. If she's able to draw that, she's moving into the semifinals. So it's going to be absolutely insane. If Divya is able to draw this game with the black pieces, then she is in the finals, and it's going to be very much difficult, but it's very much a possibility. But here she has to be very careful not to have that mindset that you just have to draw this game, because then you could actually lose, but it could be very difficult again. Here with the white pieces, Hou Yifan starts with d4, we have d5, knight to c3, knight to f6, we go into the Chigorin variation, we have bishop to f4, but now just c5. We have e3, c captures, e captures, but just a6. Now we have knight to f3, e6, knight to e5. Now just going for bishop to d6, but just g3. Knight to c6, bishop to g2, queen to c7. And now we have castles, knight captures, pawn captures, bishop captures, queen captures. And here just going for this rook to e1, queen to d6, but now just capturing that, knight captures, bishop captures, trading everything. Obviously you cannot trade because this is actually pinned, so you have to be careful. Obviously not that, but this is actually pinned, so you have to be a little careful. So now we have just castles, but now just comes this bishop back to e4, queen to b6, and queen to h5. And now immediately going for that checkmate, because she absolutely needs it if she is able to survive in this match. g6, but now just queen to f5. Now we have bishop to d7, a4, but now rook a to c8, a5, queen to c7, but just this going for this queen to f6, bishop to c6, and bishop to d3. We have queen to d8, queen to f4, but now finally going for this bishop to d5, trying to go for this checkmate. There's not much defense in this position. You have to go bishop to e4, but just queen to c4. And now, you know, if you move the bishop, just trading, and that to ruining your pawn structure, it's completely drawn. At least b3, but now just queen to b4. Now we have queen to f3, but just bishop captures, rook captures, and going for this. If you don't trade now, then just pawn collapses. So your queen captures, rook captures, but rook to b4 was played, and now better is just to go back, and then you can have some hope after doubling up on the c file. But here rook to b8 was played immediately, but now there is some trouble, because if you allow the rook into your 7th rank, it's always trouble. Here rook to a2 was played, but now just comes rook to f4, rook to f8, b4, e5, but now just rook to f6, and it is not looking good. Rook to b2, rook to b6, but here king to g7, but now just rook b captures to b7. But here you could go for some counterplay with h5, and here after rook to e7, play h4, rook captures on rook caps on e5, but you have h3, and you have to understand you cannot play a move like f4 in this position, because this check comes, and now there are very obviously, if you move here, then there are some chances of actually mating, and if you know the rook goes back, then you know there are even chances of going here, and it's absolutely insane, but all of this is still possible. So here you don't go for f4, but you can just play the rook back, and now the rook gets into the game and you get some counterplay. But here after rook caps, we have e4, but now just rook to e7, king to h6, rook caps on e4, rook to c8, but now just rook caps on f7, and we have rook to b8, a really huge blunder. Now there's a mate into rook to h4 check, king to g5, and f4 is checkmate and was on the board. And now unfortunately for Divya, she's gonna have to face tie breaks, which is going to be 1+1 of 4 matches. Whoever gets to 2.5 first is going into the semifinals. This is the extra time, and now out of the 4 games, whoever gets to 2.5 first actually wins the game. And if even this draws, then we're going to get into the Armageddon, and that's going to be absolutely insane. So, you know, we're going to have insanely amazing matches. We've already had, I don't know, man, how many games? I think we've already had like 15 matches, and out of that I have covered 12 of them. This is the 13th game I'm covering, and it's going to be absolutely insane. So, you know, without further ado, Hou Yifan is playing with the white pieces. Let's start with this d4, d5, knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to f4, but just c5. We have e3, c captures, e captures, a6, knight to f3 e6, but bishop to d3. Now just comes bishop to d6, going for this knight to e2 variation, like as we saw in the previous game where the queen to c7 was played, but just knight to c6. We have c3, queen to c7, bishop to queen to d2, but just bishop captures, knight captures. Now going for this knight to e4, but now just going for this queen to e3. Now f5, and cementing that knight there in the center. We have bishop to e2 castles, and now just knight to d3, bishop to d7, knight to f5, and now just finally going for that knight captures, bishop to b5. It's a very beautiful way to be able to trade that bishop, because that bishop in some lines it becomes a really insane thorn in your position. So it's always better to just trade it off. Bishop captures, a captures f3. Now knight goes back, castles, and now just rook a to e8. And I mean, the position is looking very nice, although that knight is not that good. I mean, queen can anyway come into the position, but it's not that much of a threat. But these double pawns are definitely somewhat of an issue. If the game goes into endgame, they could be a little bit annoying. Queen to e2 now, but just rook to f6. We have a rook f to e1, rook to h6, a beautiful move. Always going for tricks. So here we have knight to d3, but now just knight to e4, knight to e5, knight to d6, and now just going for this a4, b4, c captures, queen to b6, but just queen to d2, rook to h4. Now just going for this rook e to d1, rook to c8, a5. We have queen to b5, but just rook a to c1, rook captures, rook captures. Now I mean, this is looking very scary. You have to be very much careful, because everything of that is covered. Maybe you move like that would be helpful, but just knight to c4, just cutting everything off. Still, white is completely winning here because of a very beautiful idea in this position, which is queen to g5. And now whatever you do, you're just getting mated, and your rook is also hanging, so you cannot do anything. Hey, knight caps on e5 was played, but now after this captures, just rook to c4. Hou Yifan actually allowed this defense to exist on the board. She could have gone for an in-between move here, but she did not go for that, and now it's going to be very much troublesome for her. Here just rook captures, queen captures, but just queen to d8, and now just king to f7. I mean, it's a bullet game. Both ways are playing on increment, have like 2 seconds on the clock, so queen to d7 check, king to f8, queen to d6 check, king to f7, h4, queen to d4 check, king to f1, and queen to d1. Again, queen to d4 check, king to g3, f4 check, king h5 check, but now just king to g5. That king is moving up the board. That's absolutely insane. This check, king goes back, and now you're gonna lose all the pawns in that too with check, and that's absolutely unfortunate for Divya. And she is just almost about to about to lose. And it was on this move, on move 53, that she lost on time, unfortunately. And now I mean, she's gonna have to bounce back in the next or the next to next game. Otherwise, if she doesn't bounce back in the next game, the next 2 games are gonna be must win for her. So it's gonna be very much insane now. So let's see what happens in the next game. This is the second game of extra time bullet. We're not gonna overanalyze bullet, but again, I mean, this could go anyone's way. Divya's with the white pieces. She starts with d4, knight to f6, g3, and e6. We have bishop to g2, c5, and just knight to f3. C captures, knight to c6, but just castles. Bishop to c5, but now just comes this knight to b3, attacking the bishop. Bishop moves back. We have c4, b6, and now just going for this. This is basically Indian game setup. All of these squares are very good. And somewhere like this could also happen in this position. Bishop to a6, but now knight jumps in, trying to not go after that. After that pawn castles, but now just comes this bishop to f4. So either you push it now or you never push it again. Rook to c8, but now just comes this knight to d6, bishop captures, attacking the rook. And the position is absolutely amazing for Divya. It could not have opened in a better manner. c5, very beautiful. Rook to e8, c captures, a captures, and just knight to d4. And here just going for this rook to c4, but just b3, pushing the rook back. Rook goes back, and here just rook to e1. And the position is absolutely amazing. I mean, you don't want to trade that bishop for anything in this world. I mean, a lot of setups are available. You could also go for this, maybe just get the king out of the way, also push those pawns, get the knight centralized as well. And if somewhere around the way knight wants to trade that for that bishop, you can just get the knight. Maybe here, just get the knight there. It's just a great position to have. Knight to c6, knight caps on c6 was played, d captures, but just bishop to e5. And I think this is the position, because you allowed this d captures. That's why the bishop is no longer that much of an important piece. But knight to d5, but just e4. Knight goes to b4 now, but just queen to g4. Going for that checkmate, but just f6. We have rook e to d1 first, a swish and swung. We have a knight to d3 blocking, also going for that bishop, but just bishop to c3. And now queen to e7, bishop to f1, and just this goes back. We have b4, knight to a4, and now just bishop caps on a6. And we have knight caps on c3. For a moment, I thought that maybe, bishop captures here would be actually good for white, but then I understood it's not, because here after going for this, Bishop captures. Now that comes with the check. Queen captures, rook captures, and after rook captures, you have this rook captures. That's the reason why, even if you play like a3 now, it's still, I mean, very very careful, but you have to be very very careful. But then it's still again equal pawns, equal structure. It's most likely going to end in a draw. But here just knight caps on c3 was played, and rook to d3 was played, attacking the knight. But here just a very nice rook to a8. Rook caps on c3, rook caps on a6, rook caps on c6, and queen captures on b4. And now, I mean, how do you play this? Rook caps on e6 was played, but now the rook goes back. Rook to c1, but just this rook captures, and we have queen captures on e6, and the position is very, very winning for Divya. All she has to do is find one amazing move in this position, and here now, once the king once the king has gone well, has gone there, there is just this that she has to find in this position. But somehow, I don't know what happened, but somehow she missed this. She went for queen to d5, and it is just a very very insane mess, because this was just absolutely over. There is nothing you can do. You have to get with the queen back, and rook captures, and you're playing a rook against a queen endgame. It's a completely losing endgame here. Queen to d5 was played, but just rook to f8, rook to c7, but just h6, king to g2, but now just come rooks to e8, queen to e7, queen caps on e4, and position is absolutely just getting crumbled. Queen captures, rook to b7, but now comes this rook to a4, and now just captures, and this is a completely drawn endgame. Here h5, rook to b5, g6, but just rook to b7, rook to a5, rook to f7, rook to f5. I mean, whatever you do here, Hou Yifan is playing on 2 seconds on the clock. That's absolutely insane. But then again, I mean, it's just a draw. Whatever way you play this, f4, rook to g, king to g8, rook to b7, d7, rook to b5, king to f3, rook to b3 check, king moves, rook to a3, rook to c7, rook to b3, f5, and g captures. You have rook to c5, king to g7, rook captures on f5, but now just comes king to g6. And in this position, Divya was supposed to go for this rook to c5, but unfortunately for Divya, really, really unfortunate, she went for rook to b5 mouse slip, and it's just completely over now. Rook captures was played, and in this moment, she resigned the game, and Hou Yifan got the second bullet match as well on overtime. Now Divya has to win on demand 2 matches to be able to force Armageddon. Let's see how she does it. In this game, you're going to see a masterclass by Divya Deshmukh on how to win on demand when you require it, because with the black pieces, she has to win this game to force an Armageddon and the next game as well. So let's see how she does it. We have e4, c5, knight to f3, d6, but just bishop to b5. Going for the canal attack, we have bishop to d7, c4, and now just going for this knight to f6, knight to c3, e5, but just bishop captures, queen captures, d3. Going for a very nice symmetrical kind of setup, but now just knight to c6, and that knight is definitely, those knights are jumping there. And we have bishop to g5, knight to e7, castles h6, bishop captures, but this knight to d5, and now going for this bishop all the way back, maybe with ideas of pushing that, getting the king still in the center and just going for an all-out attack. Here a3, but just castles, b4, but now we have just b6, just protecting everything. Rook to b1, we have f5. That f5 is a beautiful move in this position, opens up the rook, follows, goes for a very very nice attack. Queen to e2 was played, but just f4, and like cutting everything off. And now this is also going to be an idea, maybe h3, but just king to h7, knight to e1, and just knight to d4. That queen is getting absolutely pummeled here. Like there is nothing here. Just queen to g4 was played, but I am just very very shocked at how this queen to g4 works even in this position, because when you think about these position, the best only thing that comes to your mind is just move like queen to f7, and here after knight to f3, now you go for this h5. Instead of this h5, I was also thinking, like Judit Polgar also said in this position, that I don't know how this doesn't trap the queen, because here after this check, king moves, and h4 should be able to trap the queen, but it doesn't, simply because of this one tactic, h5, knight to g5. So now you have to go for this bishop captures and queen captures and just f3, but it's really an all-out attack. G3, knight to e6, attacking the queen, queen moves, and h4. Now we have king to h2, but just queen to h5. And now we have b captures, d captures, rook to g1, but just rook to f7. G captures, queen captures on h4, but now just comes this rook to g4, queen to h5, and everything is looking absolutely amazing for Divya's position. She can just double up, push that pawn, and everything is absolutely amazing. Here, rook to g1 was played. I know it looks scary, but the position is still fine. There is not much that has happened, but still she can still win this if she plays the right moves. Here rook to f8, but just rook pawn to g3, and now in this position she tries to complicate things and goes for a very beautiful move. That is not the best move by any regard, but still it's a very annoying move that can get under your skin, which is this g5. And in this position, rook captures on g5 was played, knight captures, rook captures, and now just going for this very nice queen to h6. We have rook captures on e5, queen captures on e3, and here just knight captures on e3. We have rook to d8, but now just going for this knight to d5, just not getting that knight inside the white's camp. Rook to g8, but just rook to e6, and rook to e6 completely blunders the game because now comes rook to g2, king moves, and rook caps on f2, and the position is completely winning for Divya. She just now has to convert. Knight to f6 check, king to g7, knight to h5 check, king to f8, knight to f6, rook to a2, e5, but just rook to a1 check, king moves, and now just going for this f2, rook to e8 check, king to g7, rook to g8 check, king to h6, rook to h8 check, king to g5, and knight to e4 check, king to g6. But here just rook to g8 check, king to h7 was played, and it was on this move Hou Yifan's time ran out, and Divya Deshmukh was able to get this very amazing victory on demand. But she has to win the next round as well to force Armageddon. Let's see how she does it. This is the overtime bullet, and here in this position, Divya with the white pieces, she has to win to force Armageddon. Let's see how she does it. We have e4, c5, and just going for this c3, e6, knight to f3, d5. We go into the Alepian Sicilian that we have been analyzing for so long, and it's a bullet game, and it's the game we have already analyzed. So I'm not going to be analyzing it for a bit too much. But here after e captures, we have d4, transposing into some of the other games that some of the other lines here. We have knight to f6, bishop to b5 check, knight to c6. All of this was played here in one game. We had actually knight to d7, but now just knight to c6 is played, and just castles, bishop to e7, d captures, but bishop captures, but just knight bd2, castles, but knight to b3, attacking the bishop, bishop to d6, but just bishop to g5, a6. Now just going for bishop to d3, but now just h6, and now again bishop to h4, bishop to g4, again bishop to c2, but now just goes for this bishop to e7. Both players are waiting to see what other person has in mind and what his plan is. Queen to d3, but just comes knight to e4. Bishop caps on e7, knight captures, rook f to e1, but now just goes for this queen to c7, knight to b2, and now just bishop to f5. We now see this knight to d4 attacking the bishop, bishop to g6, but just knight captures, d captures, and here you could go for a move like queen to e3, and then after, if you, let's say you get knight to f5, knight captures, bishop captures, and after like moving, like threatening this, I mean not moving directly, I apologize, just not moving directly, but trying to go for this, you just play a move like that, move goes back, and most likely, after queen to f2, bishop captures, rook captures, once everything gets traded off, you'll get this position where uh it's mostly going to be a draw. So but instead of going for all of that, here queen to h3, because you have to win, queen to e5, rook to e2, but now just comes this f5. Now you have actually cemented that pawn, but rook a to e1, knight to d5, and now just going for this bishop to b3, very nicely eyeing that, king to h7, but now just comes g3. We have rook a to e8, queen to g2, but just f4, and now she is definitely pushing a lot here, Hou Yifan, but the West position is still better. She just has to find the right moves here. f3, e captures was played, but the position is completely winning in this position, simply because of the fact that there is nothing you could do. But sometimes when you're in bullet scenarios, you just pre-move the capture, and I think that's what happened here in this position, because rook captures on, sorry, not there obviously, but rook captures on e4 is e5 is completely winning, because even if you go for this, doesn't really matter. Rook captures, rook captures, rook captures, and you are up a complete, like bishop captures, and after bishop captures, you're up a complete piece, and there is no compensation. There is no compensation in this position. She would have been completely winning, but here instead, in the bullet game, she had already pre-moved this knight captures, and now there is trouble because queen moves back. We have rook captures, and now just going for this, but now just queen moves away, and that too comes with the check, into h1, knight to e3, and the position just completely falls apart here, and it's just very unfortunate. Queen to h3, but now just knight caps on d1, bishop captures, f captures, and h captures, bishop to e4, king to h2, queen to f2 check. Now just queen blocks, everything gets traded off here. Now just going for this bishop captures, but she still keeps on playing, hoping that maybe there will be just one blunder in this position where she can make a comeback. Bishop caps on b7, but just a5. We have c4, rook to c2, and this was her chance in this position, because rook to c2 is a very bad blunder by Hou Yifan, and if you can see it now, you realize it. Bishop d4 check, g6, bishop caps on c2, king to g7, but just c5, and now this position is completely winning, and she got this chance absolutely to force Armageddon, and now maybe, just maybe, that she can actually go for it, and a few more moves later, Hou Yifan's position absolutely crumbled, and we are getting an Armageddon game finally in 2025 women's speed chess, and let's see how that goes. No matter the result, the way Divya Deshmukh has played this against Hou Yifan, who has been a four times women's chess champion, who has held that title for four times, defended that title. She has won against her in so many scenarios, in time, in preparation, in gameplay, middle game, end game, no matter what you call it. She has been showing absolutely insane tactical skills, absolutely insane sacrificial skills, absolutely insane openings, and everything that she has been doing is just amazing. Her style of play, even Judit Polgar complimented. She said her style of play is absolutely insane, and I have no, you can check my videos. In every video of mine, I have told you so many times her style of play matches Judith Polgar's style, and that's why I love the way she plays, and she plays spectacularly well. And her stunning gameplay definitely is very, it's like aggressive chess, tal morphe plus style, and that's the reason why she's been so successful. And the way she plays is definitely gonna win her World Chess Championship sooner than later. So no matter the result, it doesn't matter. She's made India proud. She's going to be making India proud, and she's definitely going to be eyeing that World Chess Championship title after she goes into the candidates for that battle. So now let's head over and see the final game, which is going to be one insane matchup, one insane Armageddon game. This is the Armageddon game. Divya bid actually 348, while Hou Yifan bid and went for like 5 minutes because she wanted to get the white pieces, because she wanted to win this game. And so let's see how that turns out. This is the Armageddon. A draw is a win for black. So let's see how Divya is able to play this. And Hou Yifan with the white pieces goes for d4. We have d5, knight to c3, knight to f6, and bishop to f4. Going for the Chigorin variation, we have seen this before as well. c5, e3, and just c captures. E captures a6, knight to f3, and just e6. A very solid structure. Most likely these games end in a draw, but here just bishop to d3, but just bishop to d6. And now if you trade, again, we have seen this so many times. Goes here, queen goes here, knight goes here, and most likely everything gets traded off. Knight to c6, c3, but just castles, and queen to c7, putting a lot of pressure on that bishop. But now just going for this queen to c1, and everything is fine. Bishop captures, knight captures, and now pushing that e5 thrust, trading everything. We have just e captures, knight captures, queen captures, and just rook to e1. Queen goes back, but now just we have this knight to e2, and you can see that that knight is definitely going to be jumping on that d4 square. We have bishop to g4 now, trying to just eliminate that knight before jumping, but just knight to d4, rook f to e8, but now the queen jumps in, and now you can see there are a lot of threats in the position. You have to be very much careful. Here just h6, pushing the queen back, queen goes back, and now just bishop to d7. So Divya has done a spectacular job right from the opening. She can actually draw this and go into the semifinals, but she has to be careful. Here f3 was played, rook to e5, but now just comes this rook captures, queen captures, rook to e1, and queen to d6, but now just queen to g3. She even asks for a queen trade Hou Yifan when she has to absolutely win. Queen captures, edge captures, but now just rook to f8, rook to f2, we have rook to e8, rook to d1, and just rook to e7, bishop to f5, but now finally going for that g6. We have bishop captures, king captures, g4, and now just knight to d6. Now here just going for knight to e2, re-maneuvering that knight to a nice square. King to c6, but just knight to f4, and now just going for this g5, but this g5 is not that much of a good move, and she has to be very much careful. That knight can be very strong in this position. Knight to d3 was played, and now you have to be very vigilant here, because even if you move the rook, you have to understand that this jump comes in, it's going to gobble up all the pawns, and your game could end in a second. Here rook to d8 was played by Divya. She missed that move, or she was just in a time scramble and did not see it on time. Knight to e5 check, and now she's going to be losing 2 pawns, but maybe she can set up some sort of fortress, sacrifice the knight for a few pawns, and maybe she can do something. But here just king to c7, knight caps on f7, rook to f8, but just knight caps on h6. We have a5, knight to f5, and it's looking very difficult for Divya, just because of that one mistake, just one little bit of an inaccuracy. I don't think it was even an inaccuracy, but I think that she just completely missed the idea that her king is there on c6, and that knight jump is coming with a check on the king and also on those pawns, and now it's just very difficult for her to do anything. And in time scramble, she has done this mistake, and it's just might be the end of it all. But here she continues to go on a4, king to e3, a3, b captures rook to 8, but now just knight to d4. Now just going for this king to d7, knight to c2. We have rook to e8 check, king to d3, but now just king to d6. She's definitely going to try and set up some sort of fortress, but now just rook to b1, king to c7, knight to d4, and knight to d7. That knight is just definitely going to be jumping on those squares. You have to be very much careful. She can actually set up some sort of fortress, but it's just absolutely insane. Hou Yifan is 3.7 plus. She's up like 4 pawns here, and it's just very much difficult. King to d2, but just knight to e5 was played. Knight to c2, but just knight to c4 check. King moves, and now just going for this rook to e1. Here just uh, rook to e1, knight caps on a3, and just rook to e7 check. King moves, and rook caps on b7. We have knight caps on c2, king captures, and now just rook caps on a2. Rook blocks, but just rook to a1, and now here it's going to be very much difficult to actually go for it, because every time you try to make some progress, rook is going to check you from behind. Rook to d2, rook to c1, king to d4, rook to a1, but after rook to b2, rook to d1 check, king moves, king to e5. So both players are like playing a bullet game now. They both have way less time on the clock. Rook to c2, rook to e1 check, king to f2, rook to a1, but just rook to e2. How is Hou Yifan ever going to make progress here? King to f6, but just king to e3. King to e5, but just king to e3. King to d3 check, but here just king to d6, rook to c2, but now comes rook to d1 check. King moves, rook to a1, c4 d captures, and now just rook captures. We have rook to a2 check, king to f1, but just rook to e5, rook to e4 check, king to f6, rook to g1, but now just all of these checks have come to an end, and most likely you're going to be pushing that pawn. But here rook to a2 was played, but now just comes this rook to b4, rook to c2, rook to b6, but just going for this king to f7, king to h3, rook to d2, rook to b5, and just g6, but now here just g3, and that is definitely coming in the position. Rook to f2, we have rook to f5, rook to f1, f4, but just g captures, rook to h1 check, king to g2, rook to e1, and now just rook to e5. If you trade even here, it's still over. So rook to d1 was played, but just rook to e6, king moves back, and now just rook to e3. Rook to d2 check, king moves, rook to d1, and now just rook to a3, king to f6, but here just rook to a6, king to f7, rook to h4. We have rook to d5, but just f5, and now just rook to d1, king to g5, rook to d7, and now just rook to h6. We have king to g7, f6 check, king moves back, and now slowly but surely you're just going to push that pawn, and it's going to be very difficult for Divya to do anything. Rook to g7 was played, a very brilliant tactic by Divya, because if you capture it, it's going to be a draw by stalemate, and she wins the entire thing. King to f5 was played, not going for any of that. Rook to d7, g5, but just rook to a7. Rook to h1, rook to a5 check, rook to g6, and just rook to a7. We have f7 check, but just rook captures, rook to h8, king captures, and now just king captures, king to h7, g6, king to h6, g7, and king to h5. And it was on this move, on g8 queen, on move 101, that Divya Deshmukh resigned the game. And after like insane battle of back and forth battle, she was better in the first 3 games. She had a score of 3-1. Insane opening preparation startled her in the middle game, played aggressive chess, and in the end she has a fantastic score. Suddenly the time ran out for blitz 5 plus 1 section, 5 plus 3 section, and she thought that there's not going to be more 5 plus 3 section. She has won it, and she has won it with 3-1, and now we're going to be moving to 3 plus 1. But unfortunately there was one last game. That one last game changed the momentum of the entire thing. In 3 plus 1 she lost 4-1, and then in bullet she actually got 4-1 against in her favor, and now she was able to force tie breaks. In the extra time she got 2 plus 2 and score, and she was able to force tie breaks again with Hou Yifan. She played absolutely very much better than her in every aspect. Like the first 3 rounds for the blitz 5 plus 3, she was better. Then in the bullet game she was better. She was almost about to win. All she had to do was draw the game. She made just minor mistakes on time, and just because even sometimes you have these tournaments where you play absolutely best moves, and you are better most of the tournament, but just one slightest mistake, just one little bit of shake of the things, and just things don't go your way. Sometimes it happens that luck isn't on your side, but what you have to understand that Divya Deshmukh, you're an absolute magician of India. You've been playing spectacular chess, and I think everyone would agree that if at this level, at this age, you've been beating player of Hou Yifan's caliber of 9.5 to 10.5, she has just won this game with just a split of luck. And if you're able to do this at this age, and time is very very soon when you'll be actually going and winning the world candidates, world Swiss, world chess championship. We've already won the FIDE World Cup. We've already gotten the GM title, and she has been playing spectacular chess. Because even, and these are not my words, honestly speaking, these were the words of the people, like Judit Polgar, when she was commentating, and she was actually so impressed by the prep that she had done. Divya Deshmukh against Hou Yifan, she put her in so much pressure, starting from the opening first 3 rounds and then the last games. It was absolutely spectacular. So what I'm trying to say is that, Divya Deshmukh, hats off to you. Take a bow. You've played absolute spectacular chess, and you've really made every one of us Indians proud. And this was, I think, one of the best matches you've ever had. Definitely, with a world number one player who has held the title for 4 times, playing this spectacularly against her with the amazing amazing tactician play. Uh, Aggressive chess and magician play. It's just, I mean, one of the things that you do, and it's absolutely, it's a joy to analyze your games. It's really amazing. And your games do remind me of, Judith Polgar style, Morphy style, Tal style. And that's why it's just an amazing thing to actually be enjoying these games and analyzing these games, and that's why I do it as well. So I think she's going to be just going and winning all of these tournaments that are coming. FIDE Grand Swiss, you have the candidates, and I think she is very much in the race of getting that World Chess Championship title. And I really do hope she does as well. And the way you have played today, really take a bow. That's absolutely amazing. And even though you could not get through, sometimes luck isn't on our way, but do keep your head held high. You played spectacular chess. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming back with games like these, so stay tuned to the channel, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be seeing you guys very very soon. Thank you all.